that's what you ask. Give you all I am. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. But I'm only human, and I bleed when I fall down. I'm only human, and I crash and I break down. Your words in my head, knives in my heart. You build me up and then I fall apart, 'cause I'm only human. I'm only human. I'm only human. Just a little human.
Going into Juneau
Juneau's next
to see the Holland Glacier.
Oh, that's an interesting name. What is it? What does that name refer to?
That's somebody's grandmother's name.
Is that right? Those are words from the fabulous Judy. We're sailing on the inside passage northbound to Juneau. It's July 12th. It must be about 8 a.m. I think I saw a fish before. It looked like it jumped out. It was about 3 feet long, but I'm not sure. Before we saw some flotsam floating by. You see the water is very, very weeks we kept out of here.
Lincoln Center presents.
Yeah. What a glut there was. First there was Obama, and he had top performers. One after another. Aretha Franklin, it made him cry. And you know, all these top performers.
Yeah.
And then the next 4 years there was nothing. That Trump didn't put on anything, I don't think. He just
There's not nobody artistic.
no would play for him. See, it'll stand by itself.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah, I think about like a sandbag. Whoever designed it.
Are those your new shoes?
They're not black.
Oh, see, they look, with these on, they look purple.
So if you look down there, down and to the left, right there, you see it? The rail?
Yeah.
People walking by there. I saw that this morning. They, hello.
Hello.
They didn't have any clue. And this is a work in progress. It's this lifeboat.
Yeah.
It's wrenches and shit laying around, broken parts. I hope we don't need that one. Seems like it rains and gets misty at least once a day up there.
Yeah. Everything ready in my coat. You gotta have your card. You have your card.
Ah, yes.
And your passports. I have your passports. I'm gonna go and fill up.
You're cold, eh?
lot of salmon.
More than 10,000 years old. The Tlingit took DNA samples of hundreds of their own people, and the evidence was pretty clear. They were related to that 10,000-year-old skeleton. The Tlingit have been here for at least that long, at least 10,000 years. No one's...
My name is Hubbard Lance Twitchell. I am Shukach Adi Tlingit. We're from the Chilkoot area. The Raven House is the name of our clan house. Through my mother's mother, I'm also double eagle Gilani Haida. My father's people are Yupik. Studies there. But this idea is that my name is Chone and Tlingit, and there are Chones going back countless generations, back to when Raven jumped inside this whale a long, long time ago. And so in the Tlingit way of thinking, I am every single Chone who has ever existed, and every Chone that will exist.
We have this symbolic immortality, that my ancestors who were named Yadektatsa and Kahani are living on through me. And so I know that my children and my great-grandchildren and children after them who are going to be carrying my name, Kahani and Yadektatsa, I'm going to be living on through them.
This connection to the past isn't just theoretical or mystical, it's practical. The Tlingit take their older generations very seriously. Dr. Whirl and the Sea-Alaska Heritage Institute are working hard to perpetuate the culture and teach it to the generations that are coming up. And that's a beautiful thing. But to understand their work and how they had to form an institute in the first place, we have to first understand the journey.
Who were not from this particular area were the Russians. The Russians had a number of small settlements, and so some of the things between the Russians and the Tlingits were tense, but also potentially sustainable in a lot of ways, trade, and also the Russians had built some schools, and they were looking at trilingual schools and bilingual schools.
So in 1867, when the United States purchased Alaska from Russians, we were called the uncivilized tribes. We were uncivilized. So we came without any kind of rights to our own land. Our clan leaders met, and they had this discussion about whether they should wage war or not. And instead of waging war, they hired a lawyer, and they sent that lawyer to Washington, D.C., and he was to tell the Great White Father that if they wanted to buy Alaska, then they had to buy it from its rightful owners, the Tlingit people.
On the coast, giving them the rare and dubious distinction of being one of a very small handful of American towns to ever be bombed by its own military. Soon after the bombardment of the American towns, a solution was proposed for this Alaskan problem. The United States transferred control of Alaska from military to civil authorities, and with the civilian rule came the missionaries.
And they laid out a map of Alaska, and they said, okay, we've got these major religious entities, and they just divided Alaska between these religions. Those religions established schools and laws. And some of the first things that they outlawed were use of our languages, dancing with masks, and having ceremonies. And so those things were systematically oppressed.
For 10,000 years, this was our homeland. We developed a very rich and complex culture. My own grandfather, in trying to become a citizen, he had to swear that he had abandoned his tribal ways, that he had severed his relationship with his with my grandparents. And I have to tell you, my grandparents didn't like white people, and so I didn't have to go to school. Unlike my brothers and sisters who had to go to school, I didn't have to go to school. And so I had so much fun playing outside. And then one day, a woman came, a non-native woman from social service or something like that. And she said, "Do you want to see your brothers?" And I said, "Sure," and I didn't exactly know what that meant. But then she took me, I remember being on a cab, and as we were driving, we were passing a shrimp cannery where my grandparents were working. And I remember the cab driver saying, "Don't you think we should stop and tell the grandparents that we're taking her?" And the woman said, "No, drive on." And that's when I knew something was wrong. And I was fighting with him. And of course, I was 6 years old, I knew it was tough, but I wasn't that tough. So they threw me in the plane and brought me here to Juneau.
Can you imagine being 6 years old, being ripped away from your grandparents who raised you and not knowing how long you're going to be gone? She's going to tell you how long she was separated from them without them ever even knowing where she went. In Juneau there, Dr. Whirl was put on a boat called the Princeton Hall. It's still there in the docks of Juneau if you want to go take a look. It carried many children like Rosita up to Haines, Alaska, to a boarding school called Haines House.
I met a gentleman several years back, and he says, "Do you remember me?" And I looked at him and said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't." He says, "Well, I was on that ship that was taking us to Haines House." And he says, "You were just crying and crying." And he said, and the missionary lady kept telling me, "Stop crying." Haines House was a Presbyterian mission school. And so that's where I was raised for 3 years. And it's not a pleasant memory, I will tell you that. We were not allowed to speak Tlingit. We were punished. And I'm going to tell you some of those punishments were unbelievable, that they would do this to children. They got these 2x4s and they put holes in the 2x4s, and they would make the naughty children run through this gauntlet where they had the older children punishing the ones who needed to be punished. And I could tell you that the older ones didn't like to do it, but they were told, if you don't do it, then you have to run through that gauntlet yourself. So I guess I was a naughty one, and I was always running through it. But at nighttime, the older girls would just hold me, and they would say, "Why don't you listen? Why don't you listen?" And I don't know, maybe that was my character from then, I didn't always listen.
We have elders who told us about going to school and being picked up by their hair for speaking their language. We have teachers who publish books about finding the right chemical concoction that you can soak a rag in these chemicals and literally burn the language out of the mouths of little kids that you're in full control of. One of our elders, Joe Hott, she said, without your language, your life is going to spin out of control.
You could still see in our society the effects of the trauma. We still have a lot of social problems. Suicide rate is probably the highest among our young men. It's probably 21 times that of the national average. You could look at our prison population, and you could see here in Alaska, where Alaska Native people are only 16% of the population, but in the prisons we represent 36% of the prison population. And of them, 98% of them are native men. science is showing that there is change in your DNA resulting from trauma.
According to some studies that I'm kind of borderline obsessed with, I love the area of epigenetics. These traumatic events can actually affect the way our genes are expressed in future generations. In other words, what happened to our grandparents and their grandparents is still echoing in our own bodies today. I have to say that theory is extraordinarily close to the Tlingit idea of Hashuka, that the Tlingit are their past, but they're also their future. So, what did the Tlingit do when their culture, their language, their community was just stripped away from them? Well, they survived, and then they celebrated. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was some triumph and hope to all of this, right? Well, in 1971, the federal government settled the native land claims with the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. Alaska Natives were finally given title to 44 million acres from their original land base, which was just a fraction of what they once owned, and they were paid nearly $1 billion for having given up the original 330 million acres of what they once held. To administer this land and money, Native groups formed corporations. The corporation in Southeast Alaska is called the Sea-Alaska Corporation. And to begin the process of healing, the Sea-Alaska Corporation founded the Sea-Alaska Heritage Institute located in Juneau, which is where Dr. Worrell works and is the president.
In the 1980s, when the elders, went to Sea-Alaska and said that we need to be teaching our children in another way, and ordered Sea-Alaska, they basically ordered them, to start that work and work on the survival of our culture. They also made the decision that we're going to celebrate the survival of our culture. Thank you, noble people who have made this possible. Who will tell the world who we are, that we are Alaskans.
Ganalchish. Have a great day in Juneau, everybody.
There, I see a fin.
I see a fin.
Good catch. There's a glow. Oh, it's brown. We never saw that come up before.
Later on, they have a naturalist. You go up on the 10th deck, and he'll describe what you're seeing. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's parts. Come on, let's see ya.
Might be just. Yep.
There's a fin.
He's
Just right underwater.
Look at
There's
that.
a little more. Come on up.
Come visit us. We're your friends. Yep.
There's a fin.
He's
Just right underwater.
Look at
There's
that.
a little more. Come on up.
Come visit us. We're your friends.
Wow.
Now here's a piece of flotsam coming. See how fast we're going?
Yeah.
Compared to that?
Are those the ones that migrate from Hawaii?
Maybe.
Oh, there.
Oh my god. Oh my
There's a
god.
whole pile of them.
Oh god. He's close. He's over there.
That'd be great if one would reach right now. A whole slew of them out there. Oh,
That was a tail.
There's one way behind it too. I can see another one.
You're good at this.
Look at that spotty fish marks.
There's another one.
Yep.
Right, this is- wow, they're just like swarming through here. Maybe there's a fish. Maybe that's what I saw before. Was
They were chasing
some
them.
sort of fish.
There's a whole school of them.
I was just about ready to go in because I was starting to feel cold. And then I saw that and I was like, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, there's another one.
You see, they space themselves. There he is.
There's a tail. There's a tail went down.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. Oh, they're breached over there
Yeah,
again.
there's a bunch of them coming.
Wow.
There's a couple closer ones too. Have you guys done this cruise before?
Sort of.
Like 11 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But we flew into Anchorage and took a train up to Denali.
Oh, yeah.
Took the train back down to Seward and caught the cruise.
Oh, okay.
The Inside Passage. so-
Southbound. Southbound.
Yeah, that was 11 years ago.
Wow.
Nice. But we didn't see any whales breaching then.
Oh,
on
is that
one.
right?
No. I see like a over like the tail way out.
Way out there.
Yeah, it's yeah. There's one
I
right
see
there.
that.
Yeah. They're just coming up and down. I'd like to if you could get a picture of one doing a full breach.
Yeah,
that would be
eh?
amazing. This is.
Over there.
He's
He's spouting. There, see, they
They're
started
spouting
spouting.
right there. Yeah.
Oh, there's some really close ones there.
Oh, yes.
Ooh. Oh yeah, there's a little flipper. This is fun. Come on, breach, breach.
Little
water.
little bergets.
Bergets, yeah. Way out in the distance.
Oh yeah. Those are some serious ones. Okay, what is the name of this glacier?
Hubbard.
How big is it?
Really big.
Is there
Tide water.
tidewater, basically? Is there another mountain back there?
Mount Elias.
And what is that? Is that the biggest mountain in the...
Second highest mountain in North America.
Oh,
First being Denali.
is that true? I didn't know that.
I told you that. That's what the naturalist said.
I like that. It's good to get it. It's good to get it from a good source.
At the base of that Mount Elias, there's something called a Piedmont Glacier. It's two glaciers that combine, but they don't go all the way to the ocean, so they're not considered a tidewater.
Wow.
Like this one is.
I see.
Okay, listen to the naturalist.
Oh.
It's nothing, I'm not that smart or anything, I just listen to the naturalist. I put my pants on and like it.
It's a little bit nippy out here.
I think it's colder because the wind's coming off the glacier.
That's right, glacier watchers. The temperature does get a bit nippy. So you say that this has become a tidewater?
It is a tidewater because
It touches the ocean. My, you can see it streaking down that mountainside.
the Piedmont is more of a flat plain at the base of the mountain. It's where two different glaciers combine and it doesn't touch the water, so it's not it's
The uncontrolled intersection, and it's a little traffic jam, and it is not hitting the water, and hence the name tide water. It's an interesting fact. Thank you, Glacier Girl, for all your help. Well, I saw a flock of white, like gulls. And there was some that were especially white. Do you know what those especially white ones are? Those are gulls too. Oh. He's cold, but he's witty. That means he's kitty. Cold and witty makes him a kitty.
I think this freezes in the winter.
Oh, good question. Oh. The question was raised, do you think that this freezes in the winter? Let's find out from the Glacier Answer Girl. Is it true that this whole area freezes in the winter?
No, that's the Glacier Answer Girl's question.
Oh, this is Glacier Question Girl. Posing that. I suppose, who can we confer with to find this answer? To be delivered another time. Is it lichen? No, that's just fungus too. So what do you think the stuff is on the shoreline there? Glacier Answer Girl.
Debris from the glacier?
Yeah, glacier debris.
grinding rocks,
Yes.
the pebbles.
Oh, and what kind of green trees are those? Those really deep green. They're huge. Okay.
There they go. St. Theodosius, wasn't that one of the emperors? Theodosius?
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, that's right. That's the girl. Isn't it like Simon?
Theodore.
Yeah, Alvin. I thought I saw something humping out of the water. I'm not kidding. Right to the front of that boat. To the front
It's
left.
just debris.
Oh, they better watch out for that. Those little chunks of debris turn out to be huge major icebergs.
The iceberg, it looks like a tree.
Tree debris. Maybe it's some kind of very odd. He's avoided it though, isn't he? Theodosius.
Asked me about wildlife spotting while we're here in the bay, so let's talk about that for a minute. Anywhere inside this bay, it's a phenomenal time for you to be looking for wildlife. Along the shores, along the craggy beaches of the surrounding mountains, and certainly in the turbid depths of the bay itself. Wildlife abounds here. As you look for wildlife, here are some things to think about. First, get a sense of the landscape itself. What is the underlying pattern or structure of what you're seeing? Look at the ocean, look at the trees, look at the mountains rising from the water. Get a sense of their rhythm. Then allow your gaze to drift over the landscape and look for any irregularities. I try and look for differences in color and shape and movement. Those three things will be key for spotting something if it's not part of the landscape itself. Remember, color, shape, movement. It's also important to remember that we are passing through their world.
Okay.
In the case of fish and marine mammals, we are passing along the road of a world hardly understood and barely explored. There's a huge difference between what is possible and what is probable. So let's talk about all of the animals here in this area of the world. So this area is home to many large land mammals. Doll sheep, grizzly bears, black bears, caribou, moose, mountain goats, wolves, wolverines, beavers, coyotes, foxes, and Alaska's only native wildcat, the lynx. So, while several of these critters reside further in the interior of the park, it's possible to see bear or moose, wolf, or maybe even a wolverine along the hillside. I will tell you that in the past several weeks, we have seen bears along the shore and on the mountains. We have seen seals. We have seen other life. Let's talk about the power of a name. Where did this Enchantment Bay come from? These waters were first seen by Europeans in the late 18th century on a vessel captained by Alessandro Malaspina. At the time, they were looking for the Northwest Passage, which was believed to provide a navigable route from the North Pacific to the North Atlantic. Rumor had it that the entrance was at about 60 degrees north. Malaspina sailed directly from Acapulco, Mexico into Yakutat, Alaska, then called in at Port Malmgren, expecting to find passage. While in Yakutat, the expedition made contact with the Tlingit people who resided in this region. Malaspina's crew made extensive notes about the Tlingits, advanced societal structures, art, and methods of warfare. Then, on July 2nd, 1791, Malaspina, along with 30 of his crew, left Yakutat and sailed into Yakutat Bay. Now, if you didn't catch that, we are 5 years later. One paragraph and 5 years. When they reached Point Matoush, they were forced to stop because of icebergs. And I'm sure you can guess what they saw towering in front of them. Hubbard Glacier loomed over the ship, blocking their way and shattering their dreams of fame and fortune. So, to commemorate the overwhelming disappointment that they felt after 5 long years of exploration and having to return home with nothing, they named it Disenchantment Bay. You may think that the land has remained unchanged. Geologic time is beyond the scope of our imagination. To even conceptualize the idea that the ice coming up in front of our ship is snowed in a valley before the creation of the United States is difficult for our human brains to understand. Let me say that again. The ice that we are seeing in front of us in the water is 400 years old. That means 400 years ago, in the valley ahead of us, the snow fell. That snow then has worked its way down this valley for 400 years.
When they said that yesterday, I was like shocked that it's such a short time.
Into this bay. Right, and there's no ice at all on it. This is completely separate, actually, from the glacier itself. On Haiti Island, there are often sea lions hauled out and enjoying the sun. Surprisingly, there is an occasional pod of glaciers are receding around the world, except Hubbard Glacier. The one in front of us is actually growing. It takes about 400 years for ice to traverse the length of this glacier, meaning that the ice at the foot of the glacier is about 400 years old. While looking at the icebergs, remember that you're seeing only about 15% of what is visible. The rest is beneath the surface of the water. Since this is glacial ice, which is incredibly dense and heavy, about 85% is underwater. To the left of Hubbard Glacier is Valley Glacier. So the planet warms, creates more precipitation in the form of snow in this particular valley. The warm air comes from the Pacific Ocean and hits the coastal mountains, rising and cooling. As it rises and cools, rain changes to snow, and this large amount of annual snowfall supplies Hubbard with an excess of ice, allowing the glacier to advance. In times of colder climates, like the Little Ice Age, which was a period from 13th to 19th centuries, Hubbard Glacier did indeed retreat because of reduced precipitation. So, while the Earth's overall temperature is rising, different parts of the globe experience climate change differently. For example, Fairbanks is getting warmer and drier, while other places, such as Yakutat, where we're at, is getting wetter and cooler. Hubbard Glacier has been steadily advancing for more than 100 years, but there are also times when the glacier surges forward. This has affected Russell Fjord the most, and it's an incredibly dramatic example of glaciers and geography. More on surging glaciers. Rapid advances. This advance is so rapid that it can move forward hundreds of feet in a day.
Wow.
In fact, because of this, the nickname for Hubbard Glacier is the Galilee Glacier. And let me tell you why and what happened. So, during two recent surge events, one in 1986 and one in 2002, the glacier advanced to Gilbert Point, the place where Russell Fjord enters Disenchantment Bay. So that's behind Haiti Island. You can't see it from where we're at. But the result in both cases was the damming of Russell Fjord and making it the largest glacier dam lake in the world. In 1986, the water level rose behind that ice dam 89 feet above sea level. And in 2002, it rose 57 feet above sea level. In both cases, the ice dams did eventually fail, and after it had rained for a while, and approximately 400 million cubic feet of water per second rushed out of Russell Fjord for 24 hours. That's 30% greater than the largest measured flow of the Mississippi River, or 35 times that of Niagara Falls. Eventually, scientists actually expect that the Hubbard Glacier will create an ice dam that won't fail after months. And this is a big deal because the lake level in Russell Fjord will rise hundreds of feet. And once it does that, it will spill out over one of the low points in the mountains surrounding the fjord. And once it does that, the water will drain into the Seattle River. And that river flows into the village of Yakutat.
Yikes.
Yakutat home is the home to 650 people who rely heavily on the river for commercial salmon fishing, as well as its popularity as a sport fishing destination. And they are incredibly concerned.
Even alcohol, liquor. They loved it. They became addicted to it. Everybody. And they stopped fishing and hunting because they were drunk. And the winter came and they had no food and they all died. Because they had to be hunting and fishing and save up for the winter. But they were drunk, so somebody came to the village, they were all dead. Because they starved to death.
Wow, that's the power of the alcohol, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus. Mitchell said that story?
Mm-hmm. And his stories, they're true.
Yeah.
His characters he makes up, but the history is true.
Yeah, he does a lot of research.
Mm-hmm. We're backing up or something, where that iceberg's moving. See, it's way over there now. I think we're backing up. Look at the wake.
Those are side thrusters.
It's pushing us that way?
I don't know what it's doing. It doesn't make sense. I would think you'd want to swing the tail end that way.
So this is about as close as we're going to get to Hubbard Glacier. And we aren't leaving, for those of you who are wondering if we're already turning around. We are not. What we're doing is we're going to move the ship so everyone can get a good view of it. We're going to be here.
Yeah.
Maybe they got back on already. Might have been like an hour and a half or something. 200 down.
I don't know. I don't think they could embark while this thing is moving.
Mm-hmm. But it had stopped for a while.
Maybe that was the end of the trip. Could have been that short sweep.
Mm-hmm.
Someday. So it's like 350 feet thick at the edge here. Some places thicker, and then it goes down 250
How do they
feet.
measure that?
I don't know. They must be able to. You know, they can measure something. They know a fixed height, whatever they would maybe climb, make a marking. And then through mathematics, they can geometry, take that line, compare it to that, the distance between them, and you come up with an answer. I was come to the understanding that most of the heights and altitudes are derived where they boil water and see what the exact boiling temperature is. You know, it should be 212 at certain heights. Well, it changes. It precisely changes at different heights. So they measure when water starts to boil. They know what the temperature is, and then therefore they know the height they are at. Maybe he means this little hillet as that mountain he was describing.
Well, that's some kind of island right there.
Uh-huh.
And then he said right to the left is Mount Elias. So I don't know if
Maybe
it's that
that's
one
to the
or
left of the
this
ice.
one. Slamming doors. Well, we were doing shit at 5 in the morning, so probably pissed off.
Fixing the pulley system. There seemed to be a cord, cable that's all sort of tangled. Maybe just straighten it out. Trying to refeed it through the pulley system. And they're getting this thing repaired. They go for a little bit of a spin with it. That's the western edge of the continent. We're heading south. There's a problem with the ship's prop system, so it cannot attain a fast enough speed for us to be able to make all of our stops. So he canceled Ketchikan, which saves him about 4 to 6 hours. So it was a short stop anyway. And then the next stop would have been, and then British Columbia, we're going to miss that, and Victoria. So we're basically skipping 2 stops to probably save about 8 hours, maybe more. And then we'll be able to get back to Seattle on time. The ship is only able to attain about 15 knots. Normally they go about 22. So we're losing time as we go. It's going to eliminate those 2 stops. Which is not the first time this has happened to Judy and I on cruises. They called off Tunisia one time because of the State Department. So they put us up this dome instead. They used that wrong. And the same thing happened one time when we were coming back from Ephesus, heading west. We were going to go to Lesbos. We had such a fugitive refugee problem. 50,000 refugees from the Syrian war were on that island. So they didn't want to mix us in with them, so they canceled Lesbos. So instead they were going to take us over to Mykonos, more in the middle get over there, and it was 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was so rough they couldn't tender us in. So they called that off. And they basically just floated around the Aegean for the afternoon, and we went on our way from there. I think the next stop was maybe Santorini on the way back, and then finally back to Athens, and then around the corner to back to Venice. It's a good trip, but like I say, it's not unknown that these ports get called off. We were rerouted one time in the Caribbean. We were in the middle of the night, and we had just left Honduras and Guatemala. We were going to sort of skirt along the north end of Cuba and then get back to Florida that way. Well, there was a wall, black wall, and a hurricane. We saw that about 50 miles ahead of us, and we had to backtrack the southern Caribbean way, and that added about 200 miles to our trip, which is 10 hours in ship time. So it was storming to start with the hurricane coming in, and we evaded it, skirted it, but then they kicked up the speed of the boat up to maxed it out like 22, 23 miles an hour. So it was really rough, and we went the next day because they wanted to make up that 10 hours, so they increased the speed of the boat quite a bit. Went to the swimming pool the next day on the deck of the ship. The water was spilling out of the pool back and forth. We got in thinking it's just, float away on it. No, everybody was visibly sick, and then to walk was almost impossible on the decks. So we've seen some rough times, and it's what happens. People were really, there was one lady, she was really upset when the captain gives the announcement. She was like really upset. So, it's our trip. Is that how they get a good
They
start?
get like 8,000 people on these ships. They just
Ooh, they crowd them on.
sleeping in bunks. They even have the swimming pool. They have bunks down there to bring the troops over.
Where do they land then? In England? Well,
I
France.
don't know, they helped with the D-Day invasion.
Oh my.
And then when the planes, the airlines started crossing the Atlantic in 6
Yeah.
hours versus 6 days, and the cruise lines lost so much business, then they had to recombobulate, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And to get people to come back on. They actually talked about the fake smokestacks, like Titanic had a fake one, that's
Right.
to make it look more affluent.
I've always known that.
Holland America didn't do that. They did put up sailing ropes to make the immigrants more comfortable.
Oh, really?
They brought a lot of people over.
That spare stack, had it been designed, it could have been a lifeboat for hundreds of people.
But the Titanic emulated Holland America Line.
Is that
That
right?
ship. Yeah, and
What was that,
she,
Starline? And what was the other
White
one?
Star Line.
There was another one too.
Cunard.
Cunard, yes.
And she was real emotional because her contract's over now. And this will be her last time. The Westerdam's been redone many times. It was like bombed in World War II or torpedoed. And they redo them, but they keep the name. It's not the same ship, but they keep using the same name over and over. A lot of them recognize, because this is like our 5th cruise with them. The
Yeah.
New Amsterdam, the Oosterdam, the Rindam.
So this actual vessel that we were in has a history back to World War II?
Well,
Or
the name.
the name, okay. Its namesake.
The Noordam.
All right.
They keep using the same, the Statendam.
When do you think this ship was actually built? I think in the 60s. I thought I saw that somewhere in 1962.
Or 70s maybe.
70s.
The 80s is 40 years ago.
You know, some of them were built in like Italy.
Yeah.
There must be some big boat shipyards out in Italy.
I like these Ricola. I don't know how much sugar's in them. They don't say.
Piccolo. They make you think you can sing an opera. At first I thought it was some sort of spit of land. And it might be. But we are looking west out to the Pacific. So what I think now is that's just some sort of cold front. I don't know which way the weather's moving, but that looks odd, doesn't it? Maybe the weather is moving from the east to the west. That's coming out this way. It's hitting the cold of the ocean. It's bogged down. It's like a wall. So that's our ideas at this point.
Somewhat confusingly, the northernmost northwest coast natives live, and that's where we're going to focus this morning's conversation. Southeast Alaska is divided into 4 main groups. There's the Haida, the Tsimshian, and the Eyak. The Eyak are a small group that live in Cordova, and finally there's the Tlingit. And just because I'm going to make it a little bit confusing, I'll explain. It's spelled Tlingit, but it's actually pronounced Tlingit. The Tlingit are the largest group in Southeast Alaska, with about 10,000 people, and they're who we're going to focus on today.
Our society is divided in half, eagles and ravens, and you follow your mother's side. My mother was an eagle, and so I'm an eagle, and my children will be eagles. Within each moiety, they are subdivided into clans. So in the historic past, there were probably about 50 clans, 25 eagles and 25 ravens. And then the clans are then subdivided into houses. And houses are both a residential unit and also a social unit. So the facility we're in right now is what we call a clan house.
At one point, a whole extended family would live in the clan house, sometimes up to 50 people. If you go to the Sea Alaska Heritage Institute today, here in Juneau, you can see a replica clan house. Every plank of the wood paneling was hand-carved and chiseled. It's pretty breathtaking. But let's get back to Rosita. The clan is really the central organizing principle of the Tlingit people. Rosita is Chilkat, which is a geographic area that includes the town of Klukwan. Now you should know that in Alaska, there is only one reservation, the Annette Islands Reserve. In the rest of the state, there are Alaska Native villages, recognized by the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. Klukwan is where the Chilkat people live, but Rosita has lived most of her life here in Juneau, home to the Akwaan.
When I was growing up here, the old ladies would say, "You're not a Akwaan, you're a Chilkat-Kwan." And so we could only go and pick berries or gather from the land with their permission. And even though we don't have a title to the land today in the way that we had before, we still respect.
This property first. This property had been destroyed by a mudslide. Half the mountain come tumbling down. Our trees have very shallow roots, and when one tumbles, they kind of all tumble, and that's exactly what happened. As you can see here, there also was a beautiful little stream. It was a sediment stream, and the sediment was feeds the fish down in the Gastineau Channel, so it had been blocked off then for quite some time. So Steve had a heart and a vision to restore this property. He built holding ponds and waterfalls throughout that destruction.
The Tlingits burned out the Russian settlement, burned down all but one of the buildings, and killed about 150 of the Aleut hunters that were here working for the Russians. The surviving Aleuts went to a British boat harbored offshore and back to western Alaska to tell the Russians what had happened. In the meantime, the Tlingits built a fort at the site that is now the National Historical Park, and that's one of our stops today, to give themselves a place to defend themselves from in case of an angry Russian return, which they anticipated and received.